Avoiding triggers isn't healing. Healing happens when you're triggered and you're able to move through the pain, the pattern, and the story and walk away to different ending. Vienna Ferrone.
Hi, I'm Melinda Van Fleet, and welcome to the Good Karma Success Coach podcast. I'm a success coach, speaker, and business consultant, and my husband Ryan and I were laid off at the same time 10 years ago. We moved to the Florida Keys without jobs, not knowing anyone, hardly any money, and we never even been here. But we made it, and now we're living our best lives. And all along on our journey, I've said that someday when we get our quote-unquote shit together, we will help others. And since then, we've both done a lot of self-work and built successful businesses. So that day is here, and one of my ways of paying it forward is through this podcast. Each week, my intent is to be relatable and bring you tactical tips, tools, share my learnings and stories that can help inspire or transform you wherever you are in your career or general life and make an impact. I strongly believe that if I can do it, you can do it too. So what's stopping you?
Hi, everyone. This week's topic is a big one. And you can slice and dice this so many ways, but I will just speak from the heart and from a true, authentic place. And hopefully it resonates with you out there, and share a couple stories that are recent. And when I share the stories, I always like to say that, I really don't share them with a bad energy. I've worked hard to move through the energy. I'm still going to share them in order to help other people. So I want people to know that and understand that, so then hopefully they can do the same. Like if they have stories that have been challenging for them, that they practice and learn how to move away from the energy, but still share the story so you can help others. And that is something that Ryan and I talk about in our household a lot, as well as this topic, which is triggers. We are all triggered by someone or something. It happens to all of us. No matter how developed you are spiritually or emotionally, you're still going to get triggered by things. And we all trigger other people. And that's something to recognize too. When someone's behavior isn't as you would expect to be towards you, it is likely you trigger them on something. It is likely. It is very possible. Especially with all the social media and people being at different stages in their life, in their careers, in their relationships. When you put it out there on social media, it is likely you could be triggering someone else. So that's something to keep in mind too. I don't have a magic answer for that, but it is likely, and I think it's important to recognize. So I don't believe it's possible for someone to say they are not triggered by something, because the something is big, right? It could be so many things. Social media, which I just mentioned. It could be traffic and bad driving or unsafe driving in general. I was reading a Facebook post today from someone I know, and she is dealing with a bad driver on her street. I totally get it. We have them as well. That is a trigger for her, right? Things being out of stock. If you're shopping, I know Ryan's trying to always keep ahead of supplies. And with COVID and everything going on with importing, and even domestically with warehouse workers not showing up for work, and they're just different situations. I'm just speaking generally, that, sometimes you get upset when something that you wanted or needed, especially if it's for business or your life, is out of stock. That could be a trigger. Poor customer service. Oh, I had that this week. And I had to walk away several times from some poor customer service that wasn't really helpful. And then I ended up asking someone else who was extremely helpful. That can be a trigger. That could put you in a bad mood. That could make you lash out at someone else. It is definitely something that could be a trigger. And then there's other things too. Your neighbors. That's a great example. A lot of people deal with neighbors who are challenging. Luckily, we don't have neighbors that are challenging, but our neighbors smoke. So we have to try to stay away when they're all outside smoking, because that could be a trigger and put you in a bad mood. So recognizing your triggers is really, really important. I want to share this story that is kind of funny because it's a movie that I watched way back when, and that movie is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And I would love to see everybody, but I can't. Obviously, this is a podcast. If any of you are like nodding, like, oh yeah, I remember that movie, or I just saw it and brought back some memories. Well, that movie is filmed in Chicago, where I am from. And I was Ferris, and I probably still am Ferris, to be really honest. And that's actually where I'm going with this story. I was actually the kid who ditched school as much as I could. And why did I ditch school? Because I just knew there was something better to do that day. and, and I was ditching school, I think, before Ferris Bueller came out. So it wasn't like Ferris Bueller put that in my head at all. But I love his quote, which is, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. And I've always had that mentality in regards to making sure my time is being spent towards the best possible activity. And obviously in high school, you might think some classes are stupid, right? Or dumb or a waste of your time. I'm just being blunt. And you know what? Sometimes I was like, oh, do I really need to be here? I'd rather be doing something else. And I would ditch school. So anyhow, so I have a huge affinity and love for Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So a couple days ago, it came on the television. It was just, next in line for movies. I wasn't searching for it. I didn't find it in the feed and pick it. It just happened to come on. And I started watching it and I was like, wow, this Principal Rooney, so closely resembles someone who I had to work with who was a trigger. Even in appearance, believe it or not. In appearance, in attitude, in my way or the highway. And it floored me because it brought back memories of, oh my gosh, this person is just like someone I remember that I had to work with. And I did not like working with this person, obviously. I considered them leading with arrogance, definitely passive-aggressive behavior, condescending behavior for sure as well. And I would have to move that person's emails into a folder to get them out of my line of sight because that person was such a trigger for me. It would put me in such a bad mood when I would see emails from this person or hear from this person. So I'm watching this movie and I'm like, oh my gosh, Principal Rooney is triggering my memories of this other person that I couldn't stand. And I was so glad to not have to work with again. And then I realized on the flip side, when Ferris started talking and when Principal Rooney started talking, that I was probably Ferris to this person because I don't like to follow what everyone has to say. If it doesn't make sense to me, if it's not common sense, if it's not good for the business, if it's not good for various projects that I'm working on, if it just flat out doesn't make sense, I'm likely not going to do it. I'm going to push back. I'm going to set boundaries. I'm going to do what works best for business and for myself, not for someone's ego. And hence, that person probably thought I was a trigger for them. It works both ways. And I think this movie is such a great example. I didn't end up watching the whole movie because I ended up going to bed. And I was kind of like, I don't really think I want to watch the whole movie. I think I'm going to follow my own advice and walk away from things that are triggers. But I wanted to share this story because it makes you stop to realize, what are you watching on television that could be a trigger for you and could be something that brings back memories or even current things going on that you really are working hard to get out of your brain. And my husband, Ryan, he's really good at recognizing people and really identifying if that person triggers a memory from the past. He has had terrible, terrible work situations in his past before he moved down here, when we moved down here together and started Good Karma Sport Fishing. And really, really, really bad memories. Bad memories that sometimes he still thinks about, unfortunately. And it's something he works on every day. And he does have to think, does this person remind me of someone else? And then how do I handle it? Do I walk away from them? Do I just try not to respond? How do I walk away or move on? Because you do not want to dip into the bad energy. That is super important. When you start to think about your triggers, realize that they can be the emotional wounds that you haven't recognized and dealt with. But you can also try to make them into something positive if you start to recognize them and face them, because then you will start to grow and you're going to then become a better version of yourself. And that is something that Ryan and I have worked on and always continue to work on. Personal development doesn't stop. You're like, oh, I got to win today. I handled that situation so perfectly. No, it keeps going. Every day is a journey. Every day is a process. And every day you're going to be continuing to work on yourself. And that's why so many people don't do it, is because it's work. And let's be honest. So this topic and the tips I'm going to share are going to be in the course that I am working on called Good Karma Confidence. That will be the URL. And I'm working on this course for a late fall release in conjunction with our book chapter that I've mentioned several times. I've mentioned it on this podcast and also on the Crush It in Sales podcast. And that is for the book series, Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner. So I wanted to start addressing some of the things I'm going to be covering in the course because it gives you a sneak peek. And I think especially now with everything going on between COVID and the elections, people's behaviors aren't getting better. Let's be honest. So how can you deal with someone else? And I think that that's what's important, because we all need a little peace, a little ease, a little alignment, and other people often put you off those railroad tracks. I had it happen yesterday. I was in such a great mood. I was walking my 3 little Shih Tzus down the road like I always do, and the lady down the street, I triggered her somehow or something with my little dogs, but she made a point to stop her truck and start yelling at me for walking my dogs down the street. Now, mind you, they're 3 little Shih Tzus. Our street is full of dogs, and I carry 2 poop bags with me to pick up the poop. So I'm actually very good at all of that. And I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just walking the dogs. But she made a point to start something with me and even came back in her truck and did it again. So recognizing that someone else was triggered and then trying your best to control how you react is a really important piece of the process as well. And what happened to me, just to share, first I told her to please go away, because that was the first thing I could think of, because she caught me off guard, was please go away. So she told me to go away, and then she called me a dumbass, which made absolutely no sense, but whatever. And then she drove her truck around and came back and started to yell at me more. So then I happened to show her the poop bag and was like, it's in the bag. The poop is in the bag. And that's when I lost it, right? So now she triggered me because she came back around and had to go at me again about my 3 little dogs, which was absolutely insane. So I went back home and I took some deep breaths and I asked the universe for guidance and for help. And what I asked for was to run into my neighbors who are also down the street and happen to be across from her. And she's lived there a long time. We've lived here a long time, and they've lived here a long time. And I was like, it'd be really great if I ran into my neighbors to kind of see what type of person she is, kind of do a gut check. And this is something that I talk about in the book chapter, actually, is when you have a bad experience with someone, often you might start to doubt your own confidence in how you handled something or in your belief system about that person. And sometimes it's totally fine. Ask for help. Ask for another person their advice, or if they know that person, and then you end up finding out some things and you kind of have an easier time walking away from a situation. So in this instance, the next time, no joke, the very next time I walked my dogs, I walked them down the street like I always do, and I ran into my neighbor. She was outside. I have not seen her for months, and she happened to be outside. So I asked her, I said, hey, do you know the person across the street that drives this and this car? And she said, oh, she's an asshole. Hello, bingo. I hadn't shared the story. My neighbor knew absolutely nothing that had happened earlier that day. Right away, she gave me total clarity that that person is the one that has the challenge. And that's what you'll find. You'll find that. So what do? You say thank you. And the next time I see her, I'm just going to send her love and light. I'm going to say, please leave me alone, and send her love and light. Because honestly, there's some challenges there that she probably needs to work on. Not my business, not my problem. I just need to walk away and make sure she doesn't trigger me and get me off my positive railroad tracks. I like to be on the positive railroad tracks, I'll be honest. So I like to recognize triggers and stay away from them as much as possible. It is work, people. It is work. It is not easy, especially now, but it is work, and I know you can do it. So I'm going to go over some tips. This will be part 1 of the tips that I'm going to be sharing, and then part 2 that is in conjunction will be in the course in the fall. But again, I wanted to share some tips because I do believe that people are really struggling out there, and if I can help in any way, shape, or form, or if you hear this and you feel that you can help somebody else and pass this podcast along, then my whole podcasting journey is a success, and why I do it, to be really honest. It's just if I can help one person out there. So starting with tip number 1, don't ignore it. Don't ignore the trigger. Recognize it and find a way to embrace it. So many people ignore elephants in the room. I heard that saying years ago when I was in the corporate world, and I was like, it just sheds so much clarity. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. Families ignore elephants in the room. Work situations ignore elephants in the room, and then it becomes passive aggressive behavior, which is never good, and gossip. So don't ignore the elephant in the room. Recognize the trigger as the elephant in the room and have a discussion, whether it's internally with yourself, if it's something you can talk about with your spouse or partner, like Ryan and I. It's just a regular part of our conversation now, is talking about triggers so we can help each other move forward. But it's better to recognize the trigger and start to address it. Number 2, understand why. Start to think about, why are you triggered? Or if the other person is triggered by you, why are they triggered, right? So that just goes into really taking, again, some time to think about the situation. And there are people that really understand how it is at a conscious level and a subconscious level, and that's a lot for this podcast. But when you start to understand why something happened, so for me, when I ended up biting back at the lady who's yelling at me about my dogs, it just brings up memories of dealing with different family situations. And it's just not how I want to be, but I at least recognize where it came from and understand the why. And then number 3, again, this is work, everyone, this is work. Take action. What can you do to take action? You can just take some deep breaths for 5 minutes. Just sit somewhere quietly, practice box breathing, take some deep breaths. You can meditate, which is highly recommended. You can just try to think a better thought. Think something better. It could be about anything. It could be about your favorite food. It could be about your favorite activity. Anything better than what you were thinking about. You could think about a goal that you're working on, thinking about your plans for the weekend. Anything is better than thinking about what was going on. Have a conversation with somebody, try to take the energy out of it, but just kind of get it out of your system. Ryan and I have conversations all the time, but it's a one-time conversation to get it out there, and then that's done. Stop going over it in your head. Work out, go outside. All of these things are tools and tips that you can use, and I'm sure you can think of some others. You can, take a drive, just clear your head. Lots of people do that. Lots of people take a little drive and clear your act, but try not to react, which I know is easier said than done. As Yoda likes to say, do or do not, there is no try. But forgive yourself if you react, and then just work on that for next time and send them light and love. So I had to forgive myself for biting back and showing her the poop bag and raising my voice. But I knew where it came from, and I'm going to do better next time. Do or do not, there is no try. And my biggest thing of all that I want to close with is just understand you are not alone. You are not alone. You are not alone in this journey. Again, you are not the only person that gets triggered by things, and you are not the only person triggering somebody else. So just know you are not alone. Take your time to work through the process, work through these simple tips that are not always easy, but everyone can do them. I know you can do them, and I'm sending you light and love. So thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I changed the Facebook group name to Good Karma Vibes because I was receiving so much feedback that Good Karma was out there for a lot of Facebook groups, and I took a really awesome Facebook group training and a mastermind that I'm in. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to take action right away and change the name of the group. So my Facebook group is called Good Karma Vibes. And definitely check out my website, goodkarmasuccesscoach.com. I have a free Take Action and Believe in Yourself tip sheet, work a little, it's like a mini workbook, let's say. And I would love for you to check that out, and then you'll be part of my mailing list. And feel free to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. So till next time, be grateful, be curious, always be learning, and you know what? Have some fun too. Thank you for listening.